Yeah, perfect.
So, Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself, because I want to talk about this from both the kind of slightly entrepreneurial aspect of what you're doing, setting up
hmm
the Instagram account and, gathering users,
hmm
and also from the physio sort of self-care, well-being side of things as well, and what
Yeah,
teenagers could be doing now to sort of keep themselves fit, get themselves in good shape for the future.
yeah,
All of those things are interesting, I think.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
so first of all, just tell us, you're 2 years out of university, I think.
yeah,
Is that
correct.
right? And you're
Y-
23.
Yeah,
You're 23, and working as a physio in Clapham,
hmm
right? Having done a physiotherapy degree.
yeah,
So
yeah.
tell us a little bit about what prompted you to set up the Instagram account.
Okay, so I went into private practice initially straight after university, and I think initially just wanted to sort of recite what I was learning in a way that people would be able to uh, pick up on. So learning how to sort of convert exercises into bite-sized chunks of information that people could use. Um, Initially, I was just sort of doing it for fun, and then trying to see how many followers I could get, um, how many people I could sort of interact with, and then saw that there's a business element to it. So the more that I did it, I sort of started to pick up interest from clients and whatnot, and started to see private clients and people on the side. So it was really good initially from a learning perspective in terms of sourcing different exercises and being really creative um, with what I was doing work-wise, but also helped to feed into sort of the business side of it as well. So initially set it up for fun, and then tried to grow it, and then sort of turned into like a bit of a business pursuit as well.
Right. So how many followers do you have at the moment?
So 5,000 at the moment. So it's not huge, but it's worked okay.
It's pretty good in just a few months, isn't it? That's only a few months of being on, being up there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's been fairly on and off. So whenever I've had time to put into it, I've put into it, and I haven't really lost followers, because I think people found it sort of a fairly useful account. So every now and again, when I get a bit of time, I sort of plow sort of a few weeks into it or a month, and then sort of back off, and then um, just do it like that. And then I've also tried to set up a YouTube account as well, just to help people that wouldn't necessarily be able to access physio knowledge, and try and help them out, and also try and summarize my own sort of reading and knowledge into something that's a bit more bite-sized and accessible.
Hmm. Right. So, what sort of thing have you experimented with posts, and have you found that some are more successful than others? Can you tell how much user engagement there is?
Yeah, yeah. So things that are unique and look slightly different and aesthetic are definitely things that take off. Things that look a bit dull and boring and look like everything else don't really get the same amount of traction.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think if there's something with a unique perspective or an exercise that people haven't seen before, then it definitely gets a lot of user interest. But as well, it's a lot of it's about interaction. So how much you interact with other people. So say if you followed like a load of accounts and then interacted with each and every one of them, no matter how bad your post is, you'd get a lot more traction for each and every post that you put out versus having the best post in the world, but not necessarily interacting and commenting and liking on other people's feeds and posts and whatnot.
Okay. So
So that
the connection between how many people you follow is there and how many follow you? Is it that sort of interaction?
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of, so it's like if you say if I followed 50 people, and then I didn't interact or take note of that 50 people's site and things that they're putting out, they'd be less likely to interact with me. So I might get 2 or 3 likes. Whereas with those 50 people, if I maintained like community whereby I like their posts, comment, send them messages, more of those 50 people would then be likely to like and comment and save my posts.
Right.
So I think that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily realise. They spent ages working on content and not necessarily put too much into interacting and networking with other people. And I think that's the thing that takes the majority of the time as well. So it's taking the time out to not just post but also interact with other people on that network.
Right. Okay. Yes, I didn't realise how important that was. And obviously, that's quite a lot of time, isn't it? How much time would you say you spend per day? Or what does it kind of average out at? Because it's probably uneven, isn't it, depending on your work?
Yeah. So when I was really growing it would probably be about 2 to 3 hours a day. And I guess a lot of it would be because the post that I was putting out would take a long time to prepare. So I'd need to set up and record for a day and then sort of bulk record all of the footage that I was going to put out. Then I need to edit it. Then I need to put it to music or a soundtrack. Then I need to convert it into a file I can put on my phone. Then I'd need to come up with a caption. And then I'd put it onto Instagram, but I'd sort of batch record it and have everything ready to go. And then each day I'd post it on, but then also make sure that I'm interacting as well. But if you sort of average it out, then it'd be a good sort of hour, 2 to 3 hours or so a day. But it depends how quickly you want to grow it and what sort of content you want to put out as well. So if you were just putting out information, you could dress it up and make it look really pretty, which would probably take, I don't know, 40 minutes or so, and then interact. So for some accounts, it could take an hour and a half. For other accounts, it could take about an hour or so. If they're just taking like a picture, for example, and put it out there, then the majority of the work would just be interaction.
Right. Okay. Have you got any images from your account that you can show us? Is it?
Yeah. It might be worth trying to edit it in after, because I'm on a phone at the moment as opposed to a laptop.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right. So there's a way we could edit them in, I'm sure. Yeah, that would be, and then we'll be able to see what it is you're talking about, because you film yourself in action, as it were, demonstrating various exercises. So, So you.
Yeah, and then there's
Go on.
Sorry, you say?
No, go on.
So it's all about sort of swipe through images. So say I'd have knee pain and a picture of like a knee with like a short explanation or title at the top, and then you'd flick through, and then it would be the top sort of 4 or 5 exercises that I'd usually recommend for someone with that sort of umbrella term of condition. And then I'd go through and sort of explain the different reasons or sort of the science behind the exercises that I'm recommending.
Right.
So yeah, it's accessible and a quick sort of thing that you can look through. But I think then there's different. Sometimes I put like a picture and then have like a little explanation of like a certain body part. With a few bits of research to back it, just to summarise something that I've been reading recently.
Mm-hmm.
It would be good to show it actually. I'll see if I can send some things through, and then even if they're just attached at the end, like a little PDF.
That would be really good.
I guess it would give people a good idea.
That would be really good. What have you found works best in terms of image? You know, what engages the users best? What have you found works well, and what doesn't work well?
I think having a brand works well, and having something that's really uniform. So I'm generally quite messy in nature, so I don't think I'm really the best at it. But I think accounts that do really well are usually quite sleek and consistent with the theme. So say if there's like a set color of their brand, they'd stick to those colors and interweave them in. And I think a lot of social media is very, very visually driven. So it has to look clean, it has to look aesthetic. Mm-hmm. So I think if the color scheme's all over the place and it doesn't look clean and there's not a consistent theme, it's very noisy. Versus if it's if it all sort of fits within a certain theme, and it all speaks from the brand, then it draws people in. Also, I think something that's quite easy to navigate as well. For me, with information, it's easier to have something that's with a clear title, so you can see exactly what you're clicking on and exactly what would help, versus something that's really sort of out there and messy. But I think being clean, and having like a consistent theme is something that really works. And then I guess having things that people necessarily haven't seen before. So like a simple backstretch wouldn't really get as much traction as a completely new backstretch that no one's really ever seen before, or something that looks a little bit complicated or different. And you can usually see that you have saves on the post. So say if it's something that someone's likely to save for a future date, they'd save it, and then the more saves that you have, essentially the more traction that you've got with that post, the more that Instagram promotes it within the algorithm. So having things or encouraging people to save the post is also a really good idea. But I guess you do that by having it either fun or funny or engaging, or something that is a little bit different that sort of stands out, as to something that someone might not necessarily find again.
Right. Okay. Now, what advice do you think, maybe from your Instagram or from anywhere else, would be good for teenagers, the people who are watching now, are aged broadly, sort of 15 to 18. What should they be doing in sort of physiological terms to kind of be, at peak fitness and keep that way, for years to come?
I think firstly it's finding something that you enjoy, and I think something that a lot of people get wrong is sort of thinking that you need to exercise for a prolonged period of time. I think really it's just something that you need to do for about 20 minutes or so a day to get the real benefit of it, to get a real sort of serotonin boost, feel a bit better, be more productive. It's just a 20-minute fast walk or a 20-minute jog, but it could be a kick about and playing football and something that you really enjoy. I think it's sort of a practice that should be cultivated as well. Finding things that work for you, finding things that you enjoy, and then working to develop it. But I think if you push yourself doing something that you don't enjoy, you're less likely to stick to it. And I guess as well, it's about having a habit, creating like a habit or a time that you train, and then sticking to it, and then trying to do it every day, and then try and build it up. But no, it's hugely important. It's good to have a form of sort of physical practice.
So what attracted you to physiotherapy as a career? Have you always been incredibly fit? Have you been disciplined about this yourself?
Training, yeah. So initially, sort of sports-wise, I started off boxing when I was quite young, and then sort of built it up. And I think it gave me a real discipline to sort of focus on sports. But I kept on getting recurrent shoulder injuries, so I was sort of researching into shoulder injuries. I found I was doing it a lot in my spare time, and then physiotherapy seemed quite closed door. You couldn't really ask physios for information without paying for it. So it sort of led me to be a little bit more intrigued into reading into it. And then I think once I was in sixth form and looking at options, it seemed like the right sort of step to take. There's a lot of competition, so I fancy my chances. And then the degree was funded as well, which I think was something that was sort of pushed me more towards doing it.
So were you by the NHS?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which is good. But I need to go back into the NHS at some point and
Well, you've got to sort of work off that debt somehow, have you?
Well, I think I'll do more like a moral decision more than anything. But I think it would be good to sort of gain some experience in the NHS after. But I mean, I did a 2-month placement in a private practice, and then got offered a job at the end of it. So usually you'd go through NHS rotations, but I sort of skipped it to fast track into private practice. But I think once I've once I've gained enough experience in private practice, and I'm in a decent place with it, I think I will either volunteer or sort of split my caseload between private and NHS to gain a bit more experience into conditions that I wouldn't have necessarily seen before, but also I think to good karma and to sort of paying back for funding the degree in the first place.
So the NHS didn't expect a certain number of years service from you then? They didn't put any conditions on the loan, on it?
No, which is really surprising actually. But
it's surprising. Yeah,
yeah,
but good, obviously, good from your point of view.
Yeah. I was really fortunate. I think the last year, so the year behind me, or maybe 2 years behind me, was the last year to have done it. But I'm not too sure if that's something that they'd reintroduce.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's something that initially sort of threw me into it, but still, when I went into it, I wasn't really too sure if it was really what I wanted to do. And I think it wasn't really until the first sort of year of coming out that I felt a lot more settled with that.
After your first year of uni?
No, after my first year of actually working, I'd say,
okay.
Until I actually felt really quite settled in what I was doing.
So where do you think you'll go with it from now? Have you got a sort of long-term plan?
Goals, yeah.
What you'll do career-wise?
Do you know, I'm not really too sure. I'm just trying to gain as much experience as I can, and just sort of take up as many opportunities as possible. And I think if you sort of stay open to things, then it's amazing what sort of comes your way. So I've done a bit of work with England lacrosse. I'm doing work with England lacrosse at the moment. And then there's loads of different sort of private clients and whatnot, and different. I mean, there's a lady that's working in the film industry that I was thinking of trying to gain some experience in as well. But really, I think I just want to try and make the most of the opportunities that I've got at the moment. Try and upskill as much as I can. And then either, I'm not too sure if I want to look more into research and doing research, or trying to take things more down a virtual route. So making fitness and physiotherapy and sort of good sound advice accessible to people for like a monthly prescription or a monthly membership.
Over what
whether I'd want to go more
platform? Over what sort of platform would you do that?
So it would be through. I was looking at software to do it actually, but I completely forgot the name. But it would just be through through a website with a paid firewall or like a paid wall, and then you'd then be able to share videos, or there's also a lot of apps as well. So you'd pay like a certain amount a month, and then you can upload your content, and then it's accessible for people to share and use.
Right.
So I guess it would either be it'd be online, but either via a website or via an app. But just trying to work out whether or not it would be worth it, whether I'd be able to build the traction through social media to do it in the first place, and then whether you'd be able to get enough people to get on board to buy it. But it seems like a lot of people are doing more courses, so they get to like a level of sort of clinical expertise. They might do a bit of research as well. So either like a master's or a PhD. Get quite known within the field, and then sell courses to other physios. And so I'm not really too sure if that's the sort of route that I want to go with it. But I think I've got to this point now, and I'm just sort of looking and seeing what my next move is. And so still undecided.
Sure.
At the moment,
yeah.
But.
So Joe, can I ask you also a bit about nutrition, because you know quite a lot about that. Nutrition for sort of optimum health and strength and muscle tone and so on, because you've made quite a big change in your life, haven't you, from being eating fairly conventional sort of meat-based protein and so on, but switching to a much more vegetarian diet. What sort of advice would you have for teenagers thinking about how they can sort of get optimum fitness, muscle strength? And I'm talking about girls as well as boys here, because it's exactly the same, isn't it? And muscle tone is what everybody's after, really. So
Yeah, yeah.
what would you sort of recommend?
I'd say stay away from processed stuff. Like anything with sort of excess sugar, excess fats, anything that's in a package, and anything with a large amount of ingredients. Um, I think ideally you'd want to eat food that if you left it out for a few days, it would go off. So fresh food, fresh fruit, grains, beans. But yeah, I've definitely made a move more so away from eating quite as much protein. I guess it's a real, it takes a toll on the body. It takes a lot to digest it. And I think unless you're eating sort of organic, grass fed sort of meat, then it's not really the best for your overall health. And I guess sort of checking packaging on stuff, making sure that it's organic, making sure that fish isn't farmed. Because a lot of those sort of grain-fed animals have a lot of like omega-6s, which is pro-inflammatory, as opposed to omega-3s, which is sort of anti-inflammatory. And I think a lot of foods within our diet create like an inflamed state. So things like inorganic meats, or things like processed foods with high sort of fats and sugars. And then I guess it's just making sure that you're eating a balanced diet with it as well, making sure that you get protein from different sources, and you get carbohydrates, but healthy carbohydrates, and that you get sort of fruit and vegetables as well. But making sure to sort of avoid too many sugars, because there's a lot of hidden sugars and things, especially in fruit as well. With fruit, there's fructose, which is a slightly different sugar, but it's stored in the liver. Just eat, like say if you eat loads of fruit, it might not necessarily be as guilt-free as you think, because less is stored in the liver than other sort of glucose that's stored in the muscle. So it's then more likely to be put on as fat. But yeah, eating a healthy, balanced diet, eating greens, veg, and try and reduce inflammation.
Can I
as
just
and where you
pick
can.
you up on that point about inflammation? What sort of inflammation are you talking about there?
Just inflammation in general. I guess it would just be your body responding to it'd be your body sort of responding to the things that you're eating in a way that isn't necessarily helpful. So I guess it's sort of it would be stressing your nervous system in a sense, wouldn't it? Having, I don't know, I guess it's an inflammatory response to certain foods. I'm not too sure exactly what pathway it goes through, but I just know that certain types of food do create inflammation.
That's interesting, because there's this idea now that inflammation in the body is connected to depression. Have you heard that? It's becoming quite an established sort of connection, that people suffering from depression may not realise they have some sort of inflammatory situation in the body, something that they're not even aware of, but that is contributing to their mental state. So that's quite an interesting point.
Yeah, I haven't really looked so much into the research of it, but no, that definitely makes it. It definitely makes sense. In terms of, I guess the things that would cause inflammation would be like a lack of sleep, poor diet, stress, stress through work, or sort of repressed sort of emotions and stuff as well. If you're perhaps in a course that you don't necessarily feel like you should be on. I don't know. There's loads of different things that sort of tie into it, and usually it manifests in some sort of pathology, whether sort of psychological or physical.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So you're eating less protein now overall, because you have been quite a sort of gym bunny, as we say. Are you still on less protein?
Yeah, I've just played around with it. I think I got to a certain point of training in the gym all the time that I decided to do more sort of physio-based exercises, more gymnastic exercises, whereby I just sort of swap out, say not necessarily going to the gym and training in the gym, holding certain exercise, holding certain positions until I fatigue, or trying to do exercises with my joints at the end of range to really strengthen up my overall sort of posture, and just increasing how functional I am, as well as then reducing the amount of meat that I'm eating. But I wouldn't say that I've noticed a huge difference. I feel a lot fitter. I feel like I've got a lot more energy, and I think as well, digestion does take a lot of time and energy out of you. And if you're constantly processing heavy meals, it really does weigh you down, as opposed to having like smaller meals, or meals that you can digest a lot quicker. You just feel like so much less of your energy is sort of going into that digestive process.
Yeah, I think that's really true, actually, isn't it? Really true. So
Yeah,
what else would you say is useful for people to know about in this world of sort of fitness and so on? What do you think? How do you think things are going to develop in the fitness world? Do you think we'll all be doing totally different forms of exercise in 10 years' time, or do you see things continuing much as they are now?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it'd be really interesting to see how COVID sort of impacted it as well, in terms of gyms being shut, people moving away from more conventional sort of methods of training. It'd be quite interesting whether the supplement industry sort of carries on the way it is, in terms of promoting like protein supplements and shakes and vitamins and whatnot.
What do you think of supplements, Joe?
I think certain supplements are good. So things like vitamin B12, for example, vitamin D. I mean, I think really it's ideal if you can get it from your diet. But if you can't get it from your diet, then it is good to supplement it. But it's worth reading into, and knowing the things that you should eat. But I think things like Huel shakes, or protein shakes, and shakes where people miss out meals to consume that sort of processed food, isn't necessarily good. And I think the closer that we are to nature, surely the healthier we are. So I mean, there's two different types of vitamin D, for example. One that you get from the sun, also one that you get from your diet. So if one is missing, then it's not necessarily like you can't really get the byproduct of vitamin D that you need. So I guess making sure that you're outside and I don't know. Yeah, I'd read into supplements, but I wouldn't spend a huge amount of money on them. And I think a lot of it is a bit of a fad and sort of a sales.
And they are expensive, aren't they? They're really expensive.
They can be, yeah.
So COVID is making us more sort of independent exercise-wise, isn't it? I mean, you've only got to look at how many bicycles have been sold, in the last 6 months. You can't buy a bicycle in London at the moment. They're absolutely sold out everywhere. So, people are having to sort of do their own thing, aren't they? Either cycling, running, whatever it is. We've learned to be quite independent. Is that a good thing, do you think? Rather than relying on gyms and classes?
I think so, but then it's really interesting. I've seen a lot of injuries recently where people have built themselves up to a certain capacity, so ability to take load in their body through doing their gym classes or through going to the gym, and then that capacity is reduced because they've done that through lockdown, or maybe switched their training style, and then it's led to injuries. Which it's just shown me really that there is an importance of training, definitely, and making sure that you're keeping yourself moving. But I think a lot of people probably will move to more virtual sort of training techniques or training classes. But I think really,
will we all be wearing headsets? Is that what?
That could be the case. But even things like what's it called? The training. There's a cycle app that you put on in front of your bike, and it's almost like a PS4 game. So you've got like the national cyclists that are on there, or you can also get your sort of friends on it as well, and then you can race around certain tracks around the world. but it's completely virtual. So it seems like it's happening, and a lot of spin classes as well are doing group sessions and whatnot. So, but I guess even through things like Instagram as well, there's Instagram lives, or there's loads of gyms I think will start offering HIIT classes and things for people to do indoors. But I think it will lead to people moving away from equipment and more so towards movement, which is definitely a step in the right direction. Sort of learn how to master your own body and strength. Because it's amazing as well in terms of the gym how much people do exercises, but fundamentally they're weak because their core's weak. And I think we use our bodies in a way that isn't necessary, or is not necessarily how they're designed to be used. So being sort of sat down at like a table and chair or standing, no one really goes below 90. And I think that leads to a lot of weakness in the core.
What do you mean below 90? What do you mean by
so like sort of like squatting, but with your hips completely down to the floor. So
you talk about 90 degrees.
Degrees, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess a lot of people don't really sort of squat down below 90 degrees if they're I don't know, if you're sitting eating dinner, for example, you'd sit at a table, you wouldn't necessarily sit at the floor.
Yeah.
And I guess it leads to like a weakness in the core and the spine getting compressed, which I think hopefully is what is where people start looking a little bit more and looking at more sort of functional approaches to fitness.
So what exercise should we be doing to address that? Should we be doing sort of squats or something a few times a day?
Yeah, or even just being sat on the floor, for example. Just I guess working on balance. Balance is a huge thing that people don't necessarily do. Standing with one foot in front of the other, for example, whilst brushing teeth. Having just like a small strengthening routine that you do, sort of picking up maybe on areas that you're weak, so your hamstrings, for example, and then maybe doing bridges every day or every other day, just to really strengthen up those muscles. Or
bridges where you sort of curve backwards, yes, with your feet.
Yeah. So you're lying on the floor. You've got your feet on the floor, close to your bum, and then you lift your bum up off the floor.
Yeah.
But I think really one thing that people should be doing every day is spinal mobility. So lying on their back, knees together, arms outstretched, and just rolling their back side to side, and just moving their backs. It's amazing how stiff our spines get throughout the day. Just through sitting. And there's been a lot of 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds that have come to the clinic recently with really locked up spines because they've been indoors and they haven't necessarily been doing their sports through lockdown.
They've been
stuck
sitting in front of
indoors
a screen or something all day.
Yeah. But there's loads of kids with back injuries that you'd expecting people in there, or expecting from people in the sort of like late 20s, 30s, and 40s. And it is just because they've been assuming those sort of sat down, slouching positions without necessarily moving. And I think as well, another good practice would just be moving as much as you can throughout the day. So it only takes 20 minutes of static sitting for your deep core muscles to switch off. And it takes an overnight sleep for them to turn back on. So the more that you're moving and changing position, the better. But they say your next position is your best position. So especially while studying, making sure that you're getting up, stretching, changing position, and it could literally just be sitting from the sofa and standing up and moving to the kitchen table, for example, or making a cup of tea, doing a few sort of like rolls, like moving your body about, maybe doing a deep squat, for example, and then carrying on with your day. But just making sure that you're moving and changing position as much as possible. Yeah,
and I think that brings us on to the connection between sort of exercise and concentration, and the amount of sort of intellectual work we're able to do, and how to maintain concentration. So could you talk a little bit about that? Because obviously students are all struggling to get themselves to concentrate for periods of time. what's the optimum way of being able to work to our best ability?
Take away distractions, I'd say. I think one thing, although we were talking about Instagram, I guess, is to remove social media and access to certain things like that, because they're essentially designed to get people, one, addicted, but also there's very little barrier to entry, and I think that's something that you should sort of think about with everything, really. What's the barrier to entry to things that would distract you? And I guess things like emails, social media. You'd be amazed at how often you'd open up your phone and click on Instagram without even realizing that you're doing it. And I was reading a book recently that was sort of likened them to infinity pools. So anything that you sort of flick up and it reloads is an infinity pool. So that can take a lot of time. And I think as well, it sort of leads to you focusing on things that give you a real sort of dopamine rush, as opposed to having any patience to do anything else. And I think making a real barrier for entry. So say if you were to go through your phone, delete each and every one of those apps, and then every time that you wanted to go on it, you had to go onto the app store, type it in, download it, wait a minute for it to download. And there's such a barrier. You haven't deleted it, but there's such a barrier for entry there that it's probably not even worth it. And I think also sort of realizing that we're creatures of habit. So you might not necessarily even mean to go on it. It's just because it's there at a certain place, and you normally do that at a certain time, or there's a certain social cue that means that you look down and look at your phone. And I think pulling your awareness away from that and just being a bit more present and a bit more aware. And I think that gives you a like more focus and more concentration, because you're not necessarily tiring your brain out with constant dopamine rushes throughout the day. And I guess it would be a bit like having a coffee 5 or 6 times a day. You'd end up with a bit of a crash towards the end of it. And I think it's the same with social media and things that give you a real dopamine hit, that you'll eventually end up crashing. You get tired, and it just sucks so much time and energy. So I think in terms of concentration, definitely that. Being a bit more mindful through the day as well. Maybe even focusing on breathing or meditation. And just having like a little practice that you do, even if it's just taking a deep breath and recentering yourself, refocusing, and then carrying on. So I think it's far too easy to get caught up with deadlines, stress, like certain events that are going on, or and not necessarily focusing on the task that's at hand. And I think as well, just setting yourself 25 minutes to sit down and do things. Just have a timer, 25 minutes, set it. Try and focus as much as you can within that period, and then take a break, and then sit back down 25 minutes and then take a break. And I think really
in that break, we should move, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
We should take that opportunity to move, because there's got to be a connection, I suppose, between blood flow and the effectiveness of the brain. Is that going on?
Yeah. Well, I presume it would be, wouldn't it? It would be. I guess you're it's your engine, really, isn't it? Your body. You need to sort of you need to look after it. You need to make sure that you're in optimal conditioning, because it carries your brain about. And the more blood flow you've got, the healthier you are, the more energy and the more focus that you're going to have. Yeah, definitely. I think getting up, moving, but even if it is just for like a very short period, 15-20 minutes or so, if you went to exercise, it would really boost your energy for like a second sort of study session, but not necessarily between each sort of block of 25 minutes. But if you were to work for a few hours, then have a bit of a break at lunch, but just went for a quick walk around the park, or a quick jog, had a shower, came back, and then you'd be a lot more energized and focused for the evening. And it doesn't it doesn't have to be long. It could be short and quick, or a fast walk or something. And yeah, it would definitely boost you.
Yeah, those sound like fantastic tips, Joe. Thank you very much.
No, it's a pleasure.
That's absolutely brilliant. So I should have told them your full name at the beginning, which is Joe Hayden-Case, and your Instagram is called Joe's Physio. And you know, we will be sharing some of that.
Yeah, sure. And it's the same on YouTube as well. So just started up a YouTube account, but that's Joe's physio as well.
Right.
Um,
Okay, good. Well, you might have gained yourself a few more followers.
yeah, let's hope. Perfect.
Very
Thanks,
much.
Margaret.
Thanks
Thanks
a
for
lot.
having me.
Bye. Bye.
Bye bye.